The stars were cold and silent. They had been that way for billions of years. They did not care about the small dramas happening beneath them. They did not care about empires or wars or the fate of tiny blue planets. But Commander Turan cared very much. He stood on the bridge of his warship, the unyielding blade, and looked down at the planet called Earth. It was a beautiful world. Blue oceans covered most of its surface. White clouds moved slowly across its face. Green and brown landmasses showed where the humans lived. Turan's scales shifted color. They went from their normal gray to a warm amber. This was the color of confidence, the color of victory that was about to happen. "Look at it," he said to his lieutenant, a younger Velith named Krath. "Such a small world. Such a young species." Krath nodded. His scales showed respect and agreement. "The humans have only had space travel for about 100 years, Commander. They are like children. Children playing in a sandbox," Turan agreed. "They do not know what waits for them in the dark spaces between stars. They do not know about us, but they would learn." Very soon, Turan's fleet had 12 warships. Each one was massive, almost a kilometer long. They carried weapons that could destroy cities in seconds. They carried soldiers who had conquered 47 different worlds. The Velith Empire was one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. And now they had come to Earth. The humans had detected the fleet, of course. Their technology was primitive, but not that primitive. They had sent signals, messages asking about the Velith intentions. Turan had answered honestly. He always did. There was no point in lying when you held all the power. "We are here to add your world to the Velith Empire," he had told them. "You will surrender your governments, your militaries, and your resources. In return, we will bring you order. We will bring you into a greater civilization." The humans had not responded well to this news. But instead of sending warships, they had sent diplomats. Instead of weapons, they had sent words. Turan had laughed at this. Laughed until his scales turned bright yellow with amusement. "They think they can talk their way out of conquest," he had said to his officers. "How delightful." Now, 3 days later, a small human shuttle was approaching the unyielding blade. It carried a diplomatic team, a group of soft creatures who thought they could change the mind of an empire with conversation. Turan was almost looking forward to it. Far below, on Earth's orbital station called Horizon Gate, a young woman prepared to board that shuttle. Her name was Yuna. She was 26 years old. She had short black hair and sharp eyes that noticed everything. She was not tall. She was not physically impressive. She looked like exactly what she was, a junior officer in the United Earth Defense Corps. But looks could be deceiving. "Are you sure about this?" asked Sergeant Dawn. He was older than Yuna, with a kind face and worried eyes. He had served in the UEDC for 15 years. He had never seen anything like the Velith fleet. "I am sure," Yuna said. She was checking her uniform, making sure everything was in place. Her collar had a small translation device. Her boots were polished. And on her left wrist, she wore a simple black band with a single blue light. Dawn looked at the wrist device. Every UEDC soldier had one. Every police officer. Every civilian who volunteered for the defense program. There were over 2 billion of these devices on Earth and its colonies. "It seems so small," Dawn said quietly. "Against 12 warships. Size is not everything, Sergeant." Yuna smiled slightly. "You should know that by now." She finished her preparations and walked toward the shuttle bay. Dohan followed her, along with 4 other team members. They would stay on Horizon Gate, watching through cameras hidden in Yuna's uniform. They would be her backup if things went wrong. When things went wrong, Yuna had no illusions. The Velith did not negotiate. They had conquered 47 worlds, and not a single one had successfully resisted them. The histories were clear. Species that fought were destroyed. Species that surrendered were absorbed. There was no third option. Until now. The shuttle was small and fast. It carried Yuna across the dark space between Horizon Gate and the Velith flagship. She sat alone in the passenger compartment, looking out the window at the massive alien ship. It was terrifying. She could admit that to herself. The unyielding blade was a mountain of metal and weapons. Its hull was covered in strange symbols and glowing panels. Gum ports lined its sides like teeth in a predator's mouth. But Yuna had learned something important in her years of training. Fear was not the enemy. Fear was information. It told you that danger was real. What mattered was what you did with that information. She touched her wrist device. The blue light pulsed gently under her fingers. 2 billion, she whispered to herself. 2 billion and counting. The shuttle docked with the Velith ship. There was a hiss of air as the pressures equalized. Then the door opened, and Yuna stepped into enemy territory. The Velith guards who met her were huge. They stood over 2 meters tall, with scaled skin and yellow eyes. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. They looked at her the way a wolf might look at a rabbit. "Follow," one of them said. Its translator made the words sound harsh and mechanical. Yuna followed. The inside of the ship was dark and warm. The Velith came from a volcanic world, she remembered. They liked heat. They liked shadows. The corridors were designed to make visitors feel small and afraid. It was working, but Yuna kept walking. They led her through a maze of hallways until they reached a massive door. It was carved with images of Velith conquest. Planets burning. Species kneeling. An empire spreading across the stars like a disease. The doors opened. The throne room beyond was enormous. It could have held 1,000 people easily, but it was mostly empty. Just Commander Turan on his raised chair and 20 guards lining the walls. 20 guards. Yuna counted them carefully. Each one was armed. Each one was watching her. Turan did not stand when she entered. He simply looked at her with his amber eyes and waited. "You represent Earth's surrender?" he asked finally. His voice was deep and confident. The voice of someone who had never lost. "I represent Earth's response," Yuna corrected. There was a moment of silence. Then Turan laughed. "The same thing, surely. Your world has 3 patrol ships. I have 12 warships. Your species has known space travel for a century. My empire has ruled for 10,000 years. There is only one possible response. You might be surprised." The guards shifted. One of them, a particularly large warrior, let out a sound of amusement. Turan's scales flickered with interest. "Surprise me, then, human. Tell me why I should not simply take your world by force." Yuna stood very still. In her ear, she could hear Dalhan's breathing through the hidden communication link. She could feel the eyes of her team watching through her collar camera. "I am not going to tell you anything, Commander," she said calmly. "I am going to show you something. And then you will decide if conquest is worth what it will cost you." She raised her left arm slowly. The wrist device caught the light, and the universe changed forever. The wrist device was small. It was just a band of black metal, no larger than a watch. It had a single blue light that glowed softly in the darkness of the throne room. It did not look dangerous. It did not look like a weapon. Commander Turan looked at it with amusement. His scales turned yellow, the Velith color of laughter. "A communication device?" he asked. "You think calling for help will save you? My ships can destroy any rescue force before it arrives." The lodge guard, the one called Breck, stepped forward. He loomed over Yuna like a mountain. His breath was hot and smelled of meat. "Little human," he said, his voice rumbling like thunder. "Your technology is nothing compared to ours. We have conquered species with weapons you cannot imagine. What can that tiny thing possibly do?" Yuna looked up at him. She did not step back. She did not show fear. "It is not a communication device," she said. Then she pressed her thumb against the blue light. The device hummed. It was a soft sound, almost gentle, like a mother singing to her child, like wind through leaves on a summer day. And then the world exploded into light. Bands of blue-white energy appeared from nowhere. They wrapped around Breck like ropes made of lightning. He roared in surprise and tried to move, but the bands tightened. They pulled his arms to his sides. They locked his legs together. In less than a second, he was completely trapped. But it was not just Breck. Every guard in the room was caught. 20 Velith warriors, the finest soldiers in the Empire, were wrapped in crackling nets of energy. They struggled and fought, but the nets only grew tighter. The more they resisted, the more the energy constricted. The sound of their roaring filled the throne room. It echoed off the walls and ceiling. It was the sound of predators realizing they had become prey. Commander Toran shot to his feet. His scales went white with shock. His hand reached for the weapon at his side. "I would not do that," Yuna said. Her voice was calm and steady. "The nets respond to movement. The more your guards struggle, the more the nets tighten. Right now, they are at about 40% constriction." She paused, letting him see what was happening to his warriors. At 70%, the neural feedback causes unconsciousness. The nets connect directly to the nervous system. Very painful. At 100%. She tilted her head slightly. "We have never had to go that far. But I am told it would not be pleasant." Tehran's hand hovered over his weapon. He did not draw it. His eyes moved from his trapped guards to the small human woman standing before him. "How?" he demanded. "How is this possible? We scanned you for weapons. We detected nothing." "You scan for weapons, you understand," Yuna replied. "You scan for energy sources, for metal, for explosives. But the projectors that created these nets are not weapons. Not until they are activated." She held up her wrist device again. "When I entered your ship, I was breathing normally, walking normally. But with every breath, with every step, I was releasing millions of microscopic machines into the air. They are called nanites. They are smaller than dust, smaller than bacteria. Your scanners did not see them because they were not looking for them." Breck let out another roar of rage. The net around him crackled and tightened. He gasped in pain. 45%, Yuna noted. "Your warrior should calm down." "Release them," Tehran commanded. His voice was hard, but there was something new in it. Something that might have been fear. "Not yet. I want you to understand something first." Yuna walked slowly across the throne room. She moved between the trapped guards like a person walking through a forest of statues. "This device on my wrist is standard equipment. Every human soldier has one. Every police officer. Every civilian who chooses to join our defense program." She stopped in front of Tehran's throne and looked up at him. "There are currently 2.3 billion of these devices active on Earth and its colonies. That is 2.3 billion humans who can do what I just did. At any time. To anyone." Tehran's scales flickered through several colors. Shock, anger, confusion. Finally, they settled on a dark gray that Yuna did not recognize. "You are bluffing," he said. "No species arms its civilians. No species gives weapons to children and teachers and farmers. We do." Yuna smiled, but it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of someone showing their teeth. Do you want to know why, Commander? Do you want to know what made humanity decide that every single person should be capable of warfare? She did not wait for him to answer. Fear. Pure, simple fear. 100 years ago, we found something on Mars. Ruins of an ancient civilization. A species called the Keepers. They died out before humans learned to make fire. But they left behind their technology, including the design for these devices. Stolen technology, Turan said with contempt. Adapted technology. The original devices were made for creatures with 6 arms and eyes like insects. Making them work for humans took 50 years and every scientist on Earth working together. But we did it, because we also found something else in those ruins. Yuna's voice grew quiet, serious. We found records, testimonies from another species that watched the Keepers die. They described how it happened. The Keepers thought they were safe. They thought their technology made them invincible. They trusted in walls and weapons and the empty spaces between stars. She shook her head slowly. They were wrong. Something came that did not care about their walls. Something that killed them all. And the species that watched, they recorded everything. They recorded the Keeper's final message to the universe. Turan leaned forward despite himself. What message? Never trust in safety. Never believe you cannot be touched. Because the universe is vast and dark and full of things that do not care about your power or your pride. Yuna raised her wrist device again. The blue light pulsed. Humanity read that message, Commander. And we made a choice. We would never be the Keepers. We would never trust in walls or weapons alone. Every human would carry the ability to fight. Every human would be dangerous. One of the trapped guards groaned in pain. The net around him was at 50% constriction now. Humans cannot control me, Turan said. But his voice had lost its confidence. I am commander of the Velith fleet. I have conquered 47 worlds. You cannot control someone like me with a wristband and some parlor tricks. Yuna looked at him for a long moment. Then she laughed. It was a genuine laugh, full of real amusement. Control you? Commander, I am not trying to control you. I am trying to teach you. She gestured at the trapped guards. This is one device. One human. I have a team of 5 watching this conversation right now, each with the same capability. If anything happens to me, they will act. And there are 12 more teams positioned throughout your fleet. Turan's scales went white again. You infiltrated my ships? We infiltrated everything. The moment your fleet entered our solar system, we began preparations. Your ships are full of our nanites now. Your weapon systems, your engines, your life support. We have not activated any of it yet. We are not trying to destroy you. She stepped closer to the throne. We are trying to show you what would happen if you forced us to fight. Your empire has 12 warships here. We could disable all of them in minutes. Your empire has armies back home. We could release nanites into your atmosphere that would make every Velith on your homeworld vulnerable to these nets. That would be war, Turan said. Yes, it would be. A war you would eventually lose, because you cannot conquer a species where every single individual is a soldier. You cannot occupy a planet where every farmer, every child, every grandmother is carrying a weapon you cannot detect. She held his gaze. So I'm asking you, Commander, is Earth worth it? Is our little blue world worth what it will cost you? The throne room was silent, except for the crackling of the energy nets and the labored breathing of the trapped guards. Turan sat very still on his throne. His scales slowly shifted from white to gray to a color Yuna had not seen before. It was pale blue, almost silver. She would later learn that this was the Velith color of deep thought, of minds being changed. You have given me much to consider, Turan finally said. Yuna nodded. Then let us talk? Really talk. About what comes next. She pressed her wrist device again. The energy nets dissolved into nothing, dropping 20 Veloth warriors to the floor. The guards did not attack when they were released. They lay on the floor, gasping and shaking. Some of them could not stand. The energy nets had not damaged them, but the experience had broken something in their minds. They had been predators their entire lives. Now they knew what it felt like to be prey. Breck was the first to rise. He stood on unsteady legs and looked at Yuna with new eyes. There was no more laughter in him, no more contempt, only a deep, primal respect that came from facing something truly dangerous. Take them to the medical bay, Turan ordered quietly. All of them. The guards limped out of the throne room. They did not look back at Yuna. They could not bring themselves to look at her dot when they were gone. Turan stepped down from his throne. He moved slowly, carefully, like a man walking through a minefield. He stopped a few feet from Yuna and studied her face. "You are young," he said. "Young even by human standards. How did you become the one to deliver this message?" "Someone had to," Yuna replied simply. "I volunteered." "You volunteered to walk into enemy territory alone? To face warriors who could have killed you with a single blow?" "Yes." Turan's scales flickered with confusion. "Why?" Yuna was quiet for a moment. She thought about her grandmother, who had told her stories of the old days. She thought about her brother, who served on one of Earth's patrol ships. She thought about all the people on that little blue planet who were counting on her. "Because it was necessary," she finally said. "Because someone had to show you what we are capable of. And because I believed I could do it." Believed. Not knew. Believed. Certainty is for fools, Commander. I believed I could succeed. I was prepared to fail. Both things were true at the same time. Turan made a sound that might have been a laugh. It was hard to tell with Veloth expressions. "You are a strange species," he said. "Come, we will talk. Really talk, as you said." He led her to a small room off the main throne chamber. It had a table and chairs sized for Veloth, which meant Yuna's feet did not touch the floor when she sat. But she did not let this bother her. She had faced 20 armed warriors. A tall chair was nothing. Turan sat across from her. He did not call for guards. He did not activate any security systems. It was a gesture of trust, and Yuna recognized it. "Tell me about the Keepers," he said. "Tell me everything." Yuna nodded. This was why she had come. Not just to demonstrate humanity's weapons, but to explain why they existed. "We found the first ruins in 2089, she began. A survey team on Mars discovered a chamber buried under the northern polar cap. It had been there for at least 50,000 years, maybe longer. The ice had preserved everything perfectly. What did you find? Technology we could not understand. Machines that did not match any physics we knew. And records. Thousands and thousands of records stored in crystal matrices that our scientists spent decades learning to read." She leaned forward slightly. "The Keepers were an old species, Commander. They had been traveling between stars when humans were still living in caves. They were peaceful. They were wise. They had built a civilization that spanned hundreds of worlds. And they died. Yes, they died. But not because of war or disease or natural disaster. They died because something found them. Something from beyond what they called the boundary. They never gave it a name in the records. They just called it the dark." Turan's scales shifted to a troubled gray. "What was it?" "We do not know. The records were damaged. What we do know is that the Keepers tried to fight it. They had weapons we cannot even imagine. Ships that could destroy suns. Machines that could reshape planets. None of it worked. Nothing worked against this dark. Nothing. The keepers fell, world by world. Their final messages were desperate, confused, terrified. A species that had never known fear learned it at the end. Una touched her wrist device gently. But before they died, they did one thing. They scattered their technology across the galaxy. They hid copies of their knowledge on dead worlds, in ancient ruins, in places where young species might one day find them. And they left a warning. The message you mentioned. Never trust in safety. Yes, they wanted whoever came after them to be ready, to be prepared. They did not want other species to make the same mistakes they had made. Turan was silent for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer. My people have a legend, he said. An old story from before we reached the stars. It tells of a time when the Velith were not the hunters, when something else ruled our world and we were the prey. What happened? We evolved. We became faster, stronger, more cunning. We learned to fight back. Eventually, we killed the creatures that hunted us. We became the apex predators of our world. He looked at Una with something like respect. Your species has done the same thing. You have made yourselves into predators. Not through evolution, but through technology and will. We did what we had to do, Una said. The Keeper's warning was clear. The universe is not safe. There are things out there that will try to destroy us. The only way to survive is to be ready, ready to fight, ready to die, ready to take anyone who threatens us down with us. She met his eyes steadily. The Velith are not the dark, Commander. You are conquerors, but you are not destroyers. Your empire absorbs species. It does not exterminate them. That is true. But if you tried to conquer Earth, you would not be absorbing us. You would be fighting us. Every human. Every day. Forever. Because we have decided, as a species, that we will never be prey again. We will never kneel. We will never surrender. Even if it means your destruction? Even then. Una smiled slightly. Humans have a saying, Commander. Give me liberty or give me death. It is very old. Our ancestors said it before we had electricity, before we had flight, before we knew the stars were suns like our own. We have always been this way. Turan shook his head slowly. A species that would rather die than submit. I have never encountered such a thing. Now you have. The silence stretched between them. Outside the small room, the ship hummed with energy and life. Thousands of Velith going about their duties, unaware of the conversation that was reshaping their future. My empire needs resources, Turan finally said. We need worlds. We need labor. We need the things that conquest provides. Then trade for them. His scales flickered with surprise. Trade? Earth is things you want. You have things we want. We can exchange them peacefully. Both sides benefit. No one has to die. That is not how the Velith operate. Then change how you operate. Una leaned back in her oversized chair. Your empire has conquered 47 worlds. How many of those worlds are completely loyal to you? How many would rebel if they thought they had a chance? Turan did not answer. He did not need to. They both knew the truth. Conquest creates resentment, Una continued. Resentment creates rebellion. Rebellion requires armies to suppress. Armies require resources. Resources require more conquest. It is a cycle that never ends, and trade would be different. Trade creates partnership. Partnership creates loyalty. Loyalty does not require armies to maintain. She spread her hands. I am not saying it would be easy. Change never is. But it would be better. For both of us. Turan was quiet for a very long time. His scales shifted through colors Una could not identify. Finally, They settled on that pale blue-silver color she had seen before. Deep thought. Changing minds. "You have given me much to consider, Lieutenant Yuna," he said at last. "That is all I ask." "No, you ask for much more than that. You ask me to question everything my people have believed for 10,000 years. You ask me to consider that the strong should not simply take from the weak. You ask me to imagine a universe where cooperation is better than conquest." He stood up from his chair. "I do not know if I can give you those things, but I will think about them, and I will talk to my people about them. That is all I can promise." Yuna stood as well. "That is enough." For now, she turned to leave, then stopped. "Commander? One more thing." "Yes?" "The dark. The thing that destroyed the Keepers. It may still be out there, somewhere beyond the stars we know. If it ever comes back," she touched her wrist device, "humanity will fight it. We will fight it until we have nothing left. But we would prefer not to fight alone." Turan looked at her for a long moment. "I will remember that," he said quietly, and Yuna walked out of the room, leaving the commander of the Velith fleet standing alone with his thoughts. 3 days passed. 3 days of waiting and wondering. 3 days of humanity holding its breath. On Horizon Gate, Yuna spent most of her time in the command center, watching the Velith fleet on long-range sensors. The 12 warships had not moved. They had not powered up their weapons. They had not done anything except sit in orbit around the moon, waiting. "What do you think they are doing?" asked Owen. He had barely slept since Yuna returned from the unyielding blade. None of them had. "Talking," Yuna said. "Arguing, trying to decide what to do." "You think they will really leave?" "I do not know. I showed them what we could do. I explained why conquest would cost them too much. But whether they believe it, whether they care enough to change," she shrugged, "that is up to them." The other members of her team were scattered around the command center. Private Mina was monitoring communication channels, hoping to intercept Velith transmissions. Corporal Jisoo was running scenarios on the tactical computer, calculating what would happen if negotiations failed. Sergeant Hambin was checking and rechecking the station's defensive systems. Everyone was doing something. It helped with the fear. On the second day, Yuna received a message from Earth. It was from General Park, the commander of the United Earth Defense Corps. His face appeared on her private screen, tired but hopeful. "Lieutenant Yuna," he said, "the Security Council has reviewed your report. They are impressed." "Thank you, sir." Impressed and terrified. The general allowed himself a small smile. "You took an enormous risk boarding that ship alone. If things had gone wrong, they did not go wrong, sir." "No, they did not." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "The Council has authorized me to give you full authority over negotiations with the Velith. Whatever happens next, you will be humanity's voice." Yuna felt the weight of those words settle on her shoulders. Full authority, humanity's voice. If she made a mistake now, billions of people would pay the price. "I understand, sir." "I hope you do." "Good luck, Lieutenant." The screen went dark. On the third day, a message arrived from the Velith flagship. It was from Commander Turan, and it was simple. "Come to the unyielding blade. Bring no weapons, come alone." Yuna looked at the message for a long time. No weapons. That was almost funny. Her wrist device was a weapon. Every breath she took was a weapon. The Velith still did not fully understand what they were dealing with. "You cannot go alone again," Dahum said. "It is too dangerous." It was dangerous the first time. It will be dangerous this time. It will always be dangerous. Yuna stood up from her chair. "But someone has to go. And it should be me." "Why?" "Because Turan and I have already started this conversation. Someone new would have to start over. We do not have time for that." She was right, and Dawn knew it. He did not argue further. He just looked at her with worried eyes and nodded. The shuttle ride to the Velith flagship felt different this time. The first time, Una had been afraid. She had hidden it well, but the fear had been there, coiled in her stomach like a snake. Now she felt something else. Something calmer. She had faced the worst. She had walked into a room full of enemies and walked out again. Whatever happened next, she had already proven something important. She had proven that humans could not be ignored. The Velith guards met her at the docking bay. They were different from before. Their eyes watched her with respect instead of contempt. Word had spread about what happened in the throne room. Every Velith on the ship knew about the small human woman who had captured 20 warriors with a single gesture. They led her to a different room this time. Not the throne room, but a private chamber. It was smaller, more comfortable. There were actual chairs sized for humans, which told Una that someone had been preparing for this meeting. Turan was waiting for her. He was alone. No guards, no advisors, no servants. Just the commander of the Velith fleet sitting in a chair and staring out a window at the stars. "Thank you for coming," he said without turning around. "Thank you for inviting me. I have been thinking about our conversation." He finally turned to face her. His scales were that pale blue-silver color again. "I have been thinking about many things." "And what have you decided?" Turan was silent for a moment. Then he reached down to his belt and removed his weapon. It was an energy pistol, sleek and deadly. He placed it on the table between them. "On my world, this gesture means I am not your enemy. It means we can speak as equals, without fear of violence." Una nodded slowly. She understood the significance of what he was doing. A Velith warrior giving up his weapon was almost unheard of. "I have spoken to my captains," Turan continued. "I have spoken to the council back on our homeworld. I have told them everything you told me, about the Keepers, about the Dark, about humanity's decision to make every citizen a soldier." What did they say? Some of them wanted to attack anyway. They said we could destroy Earth before your people could respond. Turn your planet to ash and be done with it. Una's heart beat faster, but she kept her voice steady. "And what did you say to them?" "I asked them what we would gain. A dead world? Rubble and radiation? The Velith conquer to grow, not to destroy. A species that would rather die than surrender is not worth conquering. We would spend more resources fighting you than we would ever gain from victory." That is practical thinking. I am a practical creature. Turan's scales shifted slightly, showing something that might have been humor. But I also told them something else. Something that surprised even me. "What?" "I told them about the Dark, about the Keeper's warning. I told them that somewhere out there, something destroyed a civilization more advanced than ours. Something that might still exist. Something that might one day find us." He leaned forward. "I told them that when that day comes, I would rather have humanity fighting beside us than against us." Una felt something loosen in her chest. Hope. Fragile and uncertain, but real. "Commander Turan, are you saying?" "I am saying that the Velith fleet will withdraw from your solar system. We will not conquer Earth. We will not threaten your colonies. We will not return with weapons." He paused. "But we will return. Return how? As traitors. As partners. As allies, perhaps, if both our peoples can learn to trust each other." His scales darkened slightly. "It will not be easy. My people have been conquerors for 10,000 years. Your people have feared invasion since you first looked up at the stars. Neither of us will change overnight. But we can change eventually. Yes, I believe we can." He stood up and walked to the window. Earth was visible in the distance, a tiny blue dot against the blackness of space. "Your world is beautiful," he said quietly. "I would have enjoyed conquering it. You would not have enjoyed what came after. No, I do not think I would have." He turned back to her. "Tell your people that the Velith are not their enemies. Tell them that Commander Turan of the Unyielding Blade gives his word. We will not attack. We will not invade. We will find another way." Yuna stood as well. She walked over to the table and looked down at the weapon Turan had placed there. "I do not have a weapon to give you," she said, "but I have something else." She reached up to her collar and removed a small translation device. It was a simple thing, just technology that converted languages. But it was also something more. It was a symbol of communication, of understanding. She placed it on the table next to his weapon. "This is how we can talk to each other," she said. "This is how we can learn from each other. It is not much, but it is a beginning." Turan looked at the small device. Then he reached out and picked it up, holding it carefully in his massive clawed hand. "A beginning," he repeated. "Yes, I think that is what this is." He looked at her, and for the first time since they had met, he smiled. It was a strange expression on his scaled face, but it was genuine. "You are a remarkable creature, Lieutenant Yuna. Your species chose well when they sent you." "My species did not choose me, Commander. I chose myself. Then you chose well." He walked to the door and opened it. The Velith guards outsnapped to attention, surprised to see their commander leaving the room with the humans still alive. "Escort Lieutenant Yuna back to her shuttle," Turan ordered, "and treat her with respect. She has just changed the history of two peoples." The guards nodded. They looked at Yuna with new eyes, not as prey, not as enemy, as something else entirely, as an equal. The Velith fleet left Earth's solar system on a cold morning in October. Yuna watched from the observation deck of Horizon Gate as the 12 massive warships turned away from her world. They moved slowly at first, then faster, their engines glowing bright against the darkness of space. One by one, they disappeared into the void, until only empty stars remained. Dohun stood beside her, as he always did. The rest of her team was there too. Minha, Jisoo, Hanbin, the 5 people who had helped her change the course of history. "It is over," Minha said softly. "No," Yuna replied. "It is just beginning." Below them, Earth continued to spin. Blue oceans and white clouds and green forests, completely unaware of how close they had come to destruction. 8 billion people going about their lives, not knowing that a young lieutenant and a wrist device had saved them all. But they would learn. In time, everyone would learn. The days that followed were busy. There were reports to write, meetings to attend, questions to answer. Every government on Earth wanted to know what had happened. Every news network wanted an interview. Yuna became famous, whether she wanted to be or not. The woman who stopped an empire, they called her. The lieutenant who made giants kneel. She did not like the titles. She had not done anything special. She had just been in the right place at the right time, with the right tools and the right words. Anyone could have done it. That was the whole point. General Park promoted her to captain. It was the fastest promotion in UEDC history. They gave her a medal and a new office and a staff of her own. They asked her to help train other officers, to teach them what she had learned. "What did you learn?" A young recruit asked her once during a training session. "What is the most important thing?" Yuna thought about it for a long time before answering. "The most important thing," she finally said, "is to understand your enemy. Not to hate them, not to fear them, to understand them. What do they want? What are they afraid of? What do they believe in? Once you understand those things, you can find a way to win without fighting. And if you cannot win without fighting, then you fight. You fight with everything you have. But you never stop trying to understand. Because understanding is what turns enemies into allies." 3 months after the Velith left, a private message arrived for Yuna. It was encrypted and routed through a dozen different communication satellites. It took her team several hours to decode it. When she finally read it, she smiled. The message was from Commander Turan. "Your species has made me question things I have believed my entire life," he wrote. "That is either a gift or a curse. I have not decided which. The Velith have a saying, 'The predator who cannot adapt becomes prey.' I used to think this meant we must always be the strongest. Now I wonder if it means something else entirely. Perhaps strength is not about control. Perhaps it is about choice. I do not know if we will be allies or enemies in the years to come. But I know this: I will never underestimate a human again. May your survival continue, Lieutenant Turan." Yuna read the message twice. Then she archived it in a secure folder where it would stay until she decided what to do with it. She did not respond. Not yet. Some things needed time to grow, but she did pull up the Velith Empire's file and update it. Under the section marked Threat Assessment, she added a new note: Potential ally. Proceed with caution, but hope. It was a small change. But small changes could lead to big things. She had learned that much. The years passed, as years do. The Velith returned, as Turan had promised. Not with warships, but with trade vessels. Not with weapons, but with goods to exchange. It was awkward at first. The two species did not trust each other. There were arguments and misunderstandings and moments when everything almost fell apart, but they kept trying. Both sides kept trying. Yuna was there for most of it. She became Earth's primary liaison with the Velith Empire. She traveled to their homeworld and met their council. She saw their cities and their temples and the volcanic mountains that had shaped their species. She learned their language without a translator and their customs without a guide. And slowly, carefully, she helped build something new. The first joint project was a research station at the edge of human space. Human scientists and Velith engineers working together, studying the stars. It was a small thing, but it meant something important. It meant they could cooperate. It meant they could trust each other, at least a little. The second project was bigger. A shared military exercise, with Velith warships and human patrol vessels working together against simulated threats. The Velith taught humans about large-scale fleet tactics. Humans taught the Velith about nanotechnology and decentralized defense networks. Neither side gave away all their secrets, but they gave away enough to learn from each other. The third project was the most important. A joint expedition to the galactic core, where the Keeper's ruins had been found. Scientists from both species, working together to unlock the mysteries of an ancient civilization, working together to prepare for whatever had destroyed them, because that was the truth that hung over everything. The dark was still out there, somewhere. The thing that had killed the Keepers had not been defeated. It had not been destroyed. It had simply moved on, looking for new prey in the endless darkness between stars. One day, it might return. But when that day came, humanity would not face it alone. On the 10th anniversary of the Velith withdrawal, Yuna stood on the observation deck of a new space station. It was called Unity Station, and it hung in orbit between Earth and the Velith border. It was a symbol of everything that had been built in the past decade. She was older now. There was gray in her hair and lines on her face. But her eyes were still sharp, and she still wore a black band on her left wrist with a single blue light. Some things never changed. Dohan stood beside her, as he always did. He was her second in command now, her trusted friend, the person she relied on more than anyone else. "Do you ever think about that first day?" he asked, "when you walked onto the unyielding blade alone?" "Sometimes." Yuna smiled at the memory. "I was terrified, you know? I did not show it, but I was." "I know. We all knew." He paused. "But you did it anyway." "I did it anyway. That is what humans do. We feel the fear, and we do it anyway." Outside the viewport, the stars burned cold and silent. Somewhere out there, the Velith Empire was changing. Somewhere out there, other species were watching, wondering what humanity would do next. Somewhere out there, in the endless dark, something ancient and terrible was waiting. But humanity was waiting. 2.3 billion wrist devices and counting. A species that had chosen to never be prey again. A people who would rather die than surrender, and would rather fight than kneel down. And now, for the first time in history, they had all eyes. Yuna touched her wrist device gently. The blue light pulsed under her fingers, warm and steady. "Whatever comes next," she said quietly. "We will be ready." Doham nodded. And somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, the universe continued to spin. Empires rose and fell. Civilizations bloomed and withered. The great cycle of creation and destruction went on as it always had. But in one small corner of the galaxy, something new was growing. A partnership between predators who had learned to cooperate. An alliance between species who had chosen to trust instead of conquer. It was fragile. It was uncertain. It could still fail. But it was hope. And hope, as humanity had learned long ago, was the most powerful weapon of all.